Hello YouTubers, this is my first offering for 2018. It's how to make an Ironman cake. It's my first go at making an Ironman cake, and I decided to stick with the simple image of his mask. I think it turned out quite well, and it was really just like doing a 3D jigsaw. So I hope you like it and give it a go. So to begin with, I'll show you how I made the cake board. Here you can see I'm just rolling out some yellow fondant to go over. It was a 12-inch cake board and it was about 3 inches thick, the fondant. Now to stick it to the cake board, I just smeared it with some Trex or vegetable shortening, depending on where you come from, and I'm just smushing out the air bubbles gently, and then taking a incredibly sharp knife which cut through my blue mat, and trimming off the excess fondant. Then, just to save a little bit of money, I used a cake tin that was smaller than the cake I was about to make, and cut out some of the fondant just so that can be retained for later, because you're not going to see under the cake, so why waste your money? Okay, once that's done, I set that aside for around 24 hours just to let it dry. And then when it was dry, I took some black food dust and dusted around the outer circle, making it darker on the outer circle and then getting lighter towards the middle. This brush is just a makeup brush from a clean makeup brush, never used for makeup, from the pound shop. So I would highly recommend just getting one of those because it works really well. Now the cake, these are two 9-inch cakes I've used, and I've just cut them out so that they join together, and using a piece of cardstock or very thick card, I'm cutting out the shape of the Ironman face template, which I just googled and chose the image that I wanted. So make sure you go around the outsides as accurately as you can, but don't worry too much about all the tiny nooks and crannies because you'll be using a lot of your fondant work for that. Then pull apart all of the excess cake, but keep hold of those larger pieces as they'll come in handy later. And once that's done, I just used a cake leveler and cut the cake in half, as no one wants a massive slice of cake without any buttercream in. Well, no, I don't. Okay, so when that was done, I took the piece of thick card and I just smeared on some vanilla buttercream and stuck down the first layer of chocolate cake. I have recipes below for the chocolate cake and the buttercream, so I'll link them up for you if you want to check my ones out. And just using the buttercream like cement when you're putting bricks together, join your two pieces of cake. And then another nice layer of buttercream on the top of the cake, followed by the second layer. Same process again, sticking all the bits together. And then when that's done, the final layer is made up of the excess that we cut off. So just sandwiched it together, a bit like a jigsaw, using more buttercream to stick the pieces together. And once you're happy that's done, you can take your paper template, and here I've just cut out where the eyes would be, and I've laid it on the cake, and I'm just making small sort of cuts where it's going to just be carved out slightly. So just take out the eye pieces, and also you can see I've rounded the edges of the cake to make them less angular, basically more like the shape of a face. Once that's done, I took some white ganache which has been whipped up, and again I'll leave a link to my recipes below for that, and covered the entire cake. And once that was done, that locks in all the crumbs. I put it in the fridge for 10 minutes. That really looks like the man in the iron mask there. Anyway, once that was done, I took it out and I added a thick layer of white buttercream and took a piece of acetate and used that to smooth out the edges. It's really good to use flexible acetate because you can get a nice curve around the edges rather than trying to use your offset spatula, which would always leave sort of grooves in it. So quite a thick layer, and this will be scraped back, so there won't be too much on to finish. And once you're happy with that, you then just place that in the fridge for about 10 minutes again. I then took the eyes and angled them off so he wasn't quite Leonardo DiCaprio in Man in the Iron Mask, and cut out the edges and refilled that with a thinner layer of the white ganache and put that aside to rest. So once that had all hardened up and was ready to be covered, I rolled out my piece of red fondant to about 3mm thick and very carefully draped it over the cake, which I'd lightly sprayed with cooled boiled water to allow the fondant to stick. And it's just a case now of pulling out the frilled edges and pushing the fondant down and just making sure that you push the eye sockets in, not too hard because you don't want to break through. And then using a pizza cutter, I just trimmed off any excess fondant around the edge. I definitely recommend using a pizza cutter rather than a knife at this point, as it's a lot easier to go around the edges of the cake. And once all of that is complete, I took another piece of red fondant and smoothed it over just to get any last sort of lumps and creases and bumps out, and took a sterilised pin and pushed it through his eye sockets and pushed the fondant down so that there was no air pockets anywhere. So now you take your template and you cut out all of the pieces that would be yellow or gold depending on what you're doing, and make it like a big jigsaw, but make sure you lay it out next to you in the order so that you don't get muddled up. So placing that back onto the piece of red fondant, I just used a knife to mark out a good start point as to where the first piece of fondant should go, and then rolled out some yellow fondant and took the templates that I cut out and made an image of each of them. I'd recommend leaving the fondant out to dry for about 10 or 15 minutes because it creates less drag when you cut the fondant with your knife. And using again a bit of vegetable shortening, stuck that to the appropriate part of the mask, making sure you push out any air bubbles as well. So just carry on just like a 3D jigsaw, like I said, adding all the pieces. And the good thing about vegetable shortening is you can lift it and it won't smudge. And then I took more of the edible black food dust and painted the eye sockets and the little slit for the mouth as well. So gently do that. And then after I'd finished the eye sockets and the mouth, I went on to sort of give him a beaten up, worn, like he's been in a battle kind of look. So shaded the right hand side of his mask as if he'd been blasted by an explosion or something. I then just took, you could use the back of a knife, but I've got a modelling tool, and I made some lines where the mask had lines just to give it a bit more texture and look like there was joins and divots and things like that. So along the yellow parts, and there was also some on the red parts as well, and that just adds a little bit of extra interest and sort of realism really. And there he is, ready to go on his cake board. So for the cake board, I've just got another piece of white buttercream and smooshed that into the middle of the cake board to use as a glue, and gently lifted the cake and let him drop down to attach to the cake board. Smooth away any bits that have crept up from my heavy-handedness. And then I don't know what these bits are called, but they're kind of like lug protectors. So I assume that's where his ears would be. So I cut out 2 pieces of fondant and stuck that to each side, and then again give him that blasted look. And then with a piece of white fondant, which is the finishing touches, is to cut out the actual eye part. And again, I just let this fondant sit for about 10 or 15 minutes just to harden it up, so it wasn't quite as soft. And this is all store-bought fondant, so it's worked for me, so hopefully it should for you as well if you didn't want to order anything online. And then again, using a bit of Trex on the back, just position that and lightly press that down. And that is it. I think it turned out really well. I was really pleased with that one. And I hope you liked it and gained some little tips and tricks. I appreciate it's not perfect, but it was good enough for me. So hopefully you'll like it and give it a go, whether it be Ironman or any other character that you can do in this style. So I hope you have a really prosperous 2018, and here's to more YouTube videos. Bye everyone!